There we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Eugene. For those of you who haven't met me before, one of Excellence IT software developers, and we've got Dan and Callum on here as well.
All right.
Yeah. We go ahead, Callum.
We're just going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join. We'll get started.
Yeah. As you can see, I have my official Excellence IT, attire on, Springbok jersey. So I'm required to wear this at all times for excellence while working in the Southern Hemisphere headquarters. For those of you who may not be aware, I'm based in South Africa. Yeah, it's good to see you all here.
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning at this stage, and we'll repeat this a few times, but if during this webinar you have any questions, you'll actually notice that there is a Q&A section in this meeting where you can go and ask some questions. So normally that button should be on sort of the top tab of the meeting, and you can click on there and ask a question as we go along, and we will address those in due course.
We'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Yeah. Good.
Right, then should we get started? So first of all, hello everyone, thank you very much for coming. I'm Callum, I'm the digital marketing lead here. I'm not going to talk too much, but I'm going to repeat that any question, please put them in the Q&A section. We will be using polls as well to keep it interactive. So if they should be coming up on your screen, but if not, always double check the chat option. So now I'm going to introduce you to Eugene and Daniel, and they'll take it from here.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, once again, it's good to have everyone here. Thank you for taking the time. We are going to do our best to keep this webinar jam-packed with useful information and demonstrations, and not bore you with too much, theory and information that might not be relevant. So the purpose of the webinar today is, as we said, automation for business. With most of you, I think many of your existing customers, you already have a subscription with Microsoft 365, and we're going to demonstrate a couple of tools today. So one of those tools that will be relevant is SharePoint. You'll notice you should get a poll pop up on your screen just asking whether you use SharePoint in your organization at the moment. If you don't see the poll, you'll need to just switch to the chat view to participate in that. But it'd just be useful for us to get a feel. I think most of you use SharePoint, but it'd be interesting to get your feedback there. We'll be showing a system. Dan will be demonstrating a system that has to do with approving invoices in SharePoint using what's called Microsoft Power Automate. So Power Automate is already included in your 365 subscription. So it is something that in theory you could use to automate processes. Also be touching base on Microsoft Forms. So if you have any forms, let's say you've got paper-based forms that you'd like to make digital, you can use Microsoft Forms to do that. And we'll touch on Microsoft, again, Power Automate, how that is relevant to forms as well. We've got a demonstration about an add-on that we've developed for Outlook that allows you to save documents to and from SharePoint from within Outlook. And then we're going to look at a custom application we developed that is called a timesheet system, just as an example of some of the systems we developed. Finally, we're going to be talking about systems integration and reporting, and then we'll leave ample time at the end for questions and answers. But if we see questions come up that are relevant in the flow, we'll try and address them as we go. So remember to post those in the Q&A section. So at this point, I think, Dan, I'm going to hand over to you for the excuse me, let me first, I think I've got a slide here. Sorry, Dan, I'm going to just take presenting back.
Yeah, go ahead.
My mistake. Typical. So I just wanted to say, I think most of you are probably sold on the idea of automation. Why would you not want, a process to be automated in your organization? But I did want to just say, there is quite a bit of extensive research that shows potentially 30 to 50% reduction in administrative costs over the medium to long term. That's been demonstrated by McKinsey & Co. There's also increases in productivity there, and the potential for reduction in data error, because you are capturing less data, or there's less duplication of data and less manual processes. So these are definitely worthwhile benefits. Later on, towards the end, we'll just talk about some of the challenges of actually doing this. But I think, the benefits are probably clear. So Dan, if you want to share your screen now, and I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Eugene.
Yeah.
All right, I assume you can all see my screen now, hopefully. Yeah, okay. So this is a system that we created for one of our customers, because their previous approval system was relying on sending emails back and forth, and things were getting lost, and it was just a bit messy for them. So we've utilized SharePoint and Power Automate to create this system where they can request approvals automatically, and SharePoint will manage it, basically. So we have a system using Power Automate which monitors an email inbox, and any emails with attachments that get into there are automatically uploaded to SharePoint. And as you can see, we have one in here already. The status is new, and as you can see, there are 3 different fields. So we have approvers, Sage number, and invoice number. These are just generic fields that we can set required depending on what you need. As you can see, there are some borders around it saying that it is required, so the user knows what needs to be entered. So by using custom forms within SharePoint, we're able to create a custom form which we can set whichever fields are needed to be input. So for this instance, we're able to set approvers. So I will set myself and Eugene. There we go. So as simple as selecting those, and then we can enter some data for these fields. We can also control the input of data. So as you can see, I cannot enter any letters, just numbers. So I'll do 456, and then I'll press save. Okay, so as you can see, those 3 fields now have input data in them, and this action button has appeared. So if I were to click on request approval, on the side of SharePoint, you can see that a run flow has appeared. You could simply press run flow. And now myself and Eugene will receive an email asking for approval on the document. And while that's happening, I will switch to the pending view. And you can see that invoice 5, the one we just did now, is in this pending status. So I'll have Eugene to approve and add a comment for the time being. So hopefully that's coming through soon for Eugene.
Yeah, I've just received the message, so I'm going to just approve it here on the background.
Alrighty. So once Eugene has approved and added a comment, if I do a refresh, you can see that his response has been added. Looks good, but the status is still pending. That's because it's waiting for me to also approve. So we've set it up in a way where you can either have everyone approves, or just one person needs to approve, so that if one person rejects, the entire thing gets rejected. So I will now share my email that I received. So this is the email that you would receive. There's a link to the document itself, and then there's 2 buttons. This approve and then this reject. So you would simply select either one. I will select approve and I'll add a comment. Looks good. And then I'll press submit. I'll close that down. If I do a refresh, you can see it's disappeared from the pending status view. If I go to approved, invoice 5 is now approved, and mine and Eugene comment is in there. We can also have custom fields in SharePoint where we can customize it to make it look like a button. So as you can see, we have a column called archived where I can simply just click it. It becomes yes. And now if I go to the archived view, you can see that it is now moved into the archived view. So I do believe that's just a quick rundown of the features that we can implement within SharePoint using Power Automate. I believe Callum has a poll which he's going to pop up on the screens now, which should give us a brief overview of what you have. There we go. So do you have an approval process for invoices or similar documents? Okay, so back over to Eugene now for a demo of Microsoft Forms.
Thanks, Dan. That's really good. Yeah, so obviously the poll, if you want to respond to that, if you don't see it, just go to the chats view, and it'd be very interesting to get your responses there. But, you know, I think just bigger picture, what Dan has demonstrated is within SharePoint, you do have the ability to actually capture sort of custom field values. And then from there, you can use Power Automate, which I have on the screen at the moment, to create a flow that, you know, automates some of these processes for you. Now, in theory, you should be able to, I mean, you might not even be aware of this if I take a step back a second, but if you go to office.com and log on with your Microsoft 365 account, and you click on the little app drawer there, you can actually get into web versions of a number of apps like your email, OneDrive. I mean, you can even get into versions of Word and Excel, you know, Teams as well. But there are other things in here, for example, Planner, you might find useful. There are other apps that are basically included in your subscription. And one of those apps then is Power Automate. Now, the basic idea with Power Automate is you effectively have an automated process that runs in the background that is either triggered by an event, or it runs on a schedule. There's a couple other here, but I won't go, you know, in depth in those. And you'll notice that there's an area here for templates. You know, so for example, you can pick some templates in here where you can say schedule a reply in Teams, or, you know, save messages to OneNote. So there's quite a few examples in here that might help you get thinking. But you know, you should be able to come in here and have a play. What we found is that, you know, if a flow is really basic, you just want to send a basic email after some time, for example, that's pretty easy to do. And then what we find is customers sometimes get a little stuck with more complicated, you know, scenarios, and then they need to just get some help, and we're happy to help you with that. So I'm going to give you an example. So effectively, think of Power Automate as an engine that can run in the background and that can integrate any of the Microsoft 365 services, things like email, Teams, SharePoint, and I'm going to give you a quick demo in Forms. You could have, you know, when someone completes a form, you could have that then kick off an email or a Teams message, or again, you know, do some processes in the background. So Microsoft Forms, again, if you go to office.com, you click on the app drawer, and then you can click on Forms. Otherwise, you can do a little search for it in there if you don't see it, and it will take you to forms.office.com, from where you can design custom electronic forms. So I'm going to just give you a quick demo of this. If I go into new form here, now I've written a little you know, pre-written prompt, if you will, for Microsoft Copilot. If you're not aware, Copilot is Microsoft's AI sort of assistant. If you don't have Copilot, you don't need this. I'll show you how to manually do that, but you can effectively write a prompt like, you know, just create a little follow-up. This prompt I've written is effectively saying, can you write or create a questionnaire for the participants of this webinar to ask whether people, you know, found it useful, or what could potentially have, you know, been more informative. And so Copilot here has gone and it's actually writing these questions for me and just making a decision in terms of what types of, you know, questions should be there, which is quite clever. If I get rid of that, I could just go and say, well, I want to, do my own thing, or you could actually select some templates in here, which you can see here. I've got a post-event feedback survey, so I could click on that, and it just drops in the template for me from where I can customize. It's really pretty easy design in terms of you just click in an area and it allows you to make changes in there. You can move things around if you want to change the order by just dragging and dropping. If I click on a question, I've got some options in here, including should a question be required or not. So it's fairly self-explanatory, and we found the customers that have given this a go have been pretty good at figuring out how to use this. At the bottom, I've got add a question, and you'll notice I've got some options here for the open text or choice options, etc. And there's even an upload file option, which if accessed on a mobile device, you could upload a photograph, for example, which I think has a lot of really useful use cases. So once you're happy with the form, I can effectively go and say, I'd like to collect responses, and it gives me a URL there that I can copy and email out or send out to participants. I can send them an invite from here if I want to, but often it's better to just email it directly. You do have some options here. By default, it allows responses from within the organization, and you can decide whether you want to record their name or not, or make it anonymous. If you select anyone can respond, that opens it up to the internet, but then you cannot, you'd have to add in a question to say, if you'd like, please let us know your name and contact information. But effectively anonymous, these responses are actually anonymous. So once you have this information, let me just show you what that looks like. If I go, let me copy the link and then open that up. So there we go. That is the questionnaire. So I can, put some responses in here. Let me just see if I can skip over some things. So where there's an asterisk, it does require a response. Obviously, we're very dissatisfied. And so let me just click through here. Okay, can I submit that? Okay, I've missed some questions. There we go. So if I go back to the form, you'll see that under view responses, I've got a nice summary here of all the responses that I've received. And then I can also open the results in Excel, which will have, each line represents a response to the form. So I hope that's useful. I think that there's a lot of, use cases for this. Again, with Power Automate, you can, when someone submits a response, you can then have that kick off an email or do something clever with that, which is quite nice. So yeah, that is Microsoft Forms. I think one point I actually forgot to add about the invoice approval flow. So we're looking for one of our customers. We actually help them develop a little web application where they can basically submit a purchase order request. And then what we're looking to do is when invoices come in, we're looking to use AI to match up the incoming invoice with the original purchase order, and then have that go off to the approvers so that they can side by side view the original purchase order and the invoice. So there's a couple of things happening there. So obviously solutions like SharePoint and Power Automate can be integrated with other systems. And so we'll actually discuss that a little bit more later. What I'd like to do next, sorry, I see there's a poll come up that just asks you to what extent you still rely on paper-based systems. So this would be a great question for you to ask yourself. If you have any paper-based forms that you use at the moment, that's definitely a candidate to be converted into a Microsoft form. Okay, I'd like to demonstrate next this Outlook add-on that we've developed, and I should say Dan developed this really. He's done a great job. So effectively, if you've worked with SharePoint and Outlook, you'll notice I'm using the new version of Outlook, and with the classic version, it is the same. Working with attachments from Outlook to SharePoint can be quite challenging. If you click the little drop down here, I do have the option to save to OneDrive, but I don't actually have the option to directly save to SharePoint, which is quite strange, really. If I go to Save As, then that will bring up a file dialog box where there's no easy way for me to immediately navigate to SharePoint. Now, there are some ways, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, but effectively what most people end up doing is they'll save the file to a temporary location on their machines and then open up SharePoint in a browser and then upload the file, which is really not ideal. It's a bit clunky, but it also creates local copies of files, which you really don't want to do in an ideal world. So this little tab on the right, we're calling it Wingman because it just sits in the wing of Outlook, allows for really quick and easy navigation of the tree structure within of your SharePoint structure. So in your SharePoint site, any team site you might have, and that structure is available, so you can sort of navigate through it and click through and get to folders. So this is only for sites and document libraries and folders. Then if I click over to the Files tab here, I can see the files contained in that location. If I then want to upload this file from Outlook into SharePoint, I can just click the little upload attachments icon. I've got the option here, because that's a bit of a strange name. Let me just rename that to, let's say, something like Microsoft Invoice. And I can then upload that to SharePoint. And I should get a little, there we go, green tick there that says it's been uploaded. So we've got the Microsoft Invoice uploaded to SharePoint. The inverse of that, of course, if I go to a new email, if I wanted to attach that file to an email, I can just click on the little paperclip icon, and then that will add the file to the email as an attachment. So a couple of things in here just to mention. We can easily add a specific location to favorites. So if there's a folder in SharePoint that you use a lot for attachments, if we add that as a favorite and switch to the favorites tab, I now have that folder saved in there, and I can easily get back in there with one click. Similarly, if I go to the history tab, this is sort of recent folders I've navigated to, and I can just click on any of those and it will open up that folder for me. Just a couple more features. If I am in a specific location, let me go back to the other folder, and I wanted to find a specific file. So if I typed in test, that comes up with any matches. And then if I want to do a full search of all SharePoint structures, if I do a test search there, it will find any documents within all of SharePoint containing the word test in the name, which is quite powerful. So if I click on that file, it'll take me to that location. So yeah, that's Wingman. What we find is that some users within the organization have to manage a lot of files and attachments, and this might be particularly useful for them in terms of doing that in an efficient way. But if it's not relevant to you, then of course that's absolutely fine. Our last demonstration, before we just talk about systems integration and reports, will be about a custom application we developed for one of our customers. Dan, if you want to share your screen so long. Yeah. So when it comes to various systems, sorry, I see we've got another poll there. So how are you currently saving and managing email attachments like invoices? That'd be great if we could get your feedback on that one. So when it comes to automating systems, like we say, there are some tools available that that are self-service, that if you feel comfortable, you can just have a go at designing something yourself. And those tools are getting more powerful as we go along, especially with AI also coming in and assisting there with giving you some advice and building some of those yourselves. But then you do get to a point where you perhaps require something a little bit more sophisticated. It's not so easy to build yourselves, and that's obviously what we do. We're happy to help in those cases. So you may have, for example, complex Excel sheets within the business that have become really critical, but having very important company data in an Excel sheet, it gets very clunky. It's very easy for someone to go in and make a change that you won't even notice. accidentally, and then they create a mess in your data. It's not really a proper multi-user system, so it becomes difficult when multiple people work on it. So when you really need a system that is built around your needs really tightly, we develop these web applications. So this timesheet system is an example of that, and it doesn't need to be very complicated. The simpler you can keep the idea, obviously the lower the cost is going to be. But these systems can be extended over time to become extremely sophisticated and cover a lot of bases. So Dan, I'll hand over to you.
All right, thanks, Eugene. So this is a electronic timesheet system that we have developed for one of our customers. They found that their admin staff were having to process quite a lot of paper timesheets that their employees were filling out. So they would scan them, upload them to SharePoint, and then they would also have to read them and process them and enter that data into their system. So we come up with a solution where their employees could simply log in on a mobile device or a laptop and easily enter their weekly hours for the week. So this would be the admin location for working. So this is the submissions page. So as you can see, there are multiple different employees, all with different statuses of started, completed, or not started, and a breakdown of the hours over the week and totals. So if the admin team wanted to see a more detailed view of the hours for that employee, they could simply expand, and then you can see that each day and a breakdown of the hours. So I'll quickly demo the process that an employee would go through when they're creating a timesheet. So they would come in, they would select a employee name, preferably their name, but obviously they wanted a system where their supervisors could also go in and select an employee name as well. So I will now press create, and now it's shown a timesheet basically at the bottom. So the way the customers wanted this is they wanted the employees to first select the day status first. So in this case, I will choose normal working. As you can see, the start time and finish time have now become enabled. And if I were to try and save at this stage, you'll see a notification at the bottom saying the timesheet is invalid. That's because we have these fields which are required for the admin team to process it correctly. So I will just quickly select these, and then I'll press save again. And then we've had a confirmation that it has been updated. If I switch back to the submissions, you can see the one I was just working on, Del McCall. He has started, and we have the entry that we just did on the Monday. We also have quick filters, so we can easily select any of these colored legends up here, which allow us to easily select and go through them. So the admin team would then go and select any of the completed timesheets and do a bulk action where they can press upload. These would then generate an Excel file with each of the employees' data and upload that directly into SharePoint where they can do further processing for the timesheet. So I believe that's that's it. A little overview of the timesheet system. Just give you a quick demo of what it looks like on mobile view. So this is how it would look on a mobile device for the employee. So if I go back to the submission and then go on Dell, scroll across, if I can scroll across. Okay, so I'll just view this one. Okay. So there we go. This is what it would look like for the mobile view. They can just easily swipe across and they can see the hours so that they wouldn't need to have a laptop or something. They can do it from their personal phone. Okay.
That's great, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so these custom web apps, as I say, these can be built, really snugly around a specific requirement and can be changed to fit the customer's needs. They're obviously a bit more work than just, Microsoft Forms or, some of these solutions we showed earlier. But the benefit is you can really make it work exactly the way you want it. And any investment in these systems are obviously, the customer owns the system. You're not paying a subscription model for the service. It's your software, and any capital expense and investment you make in it is an improvement that you can benefit from in the long term, as opposed to solutions out there that you usually have to keep on paying to be able to keep using it. So I'm going to just go through a couple of questions before I move on to integration and reports. Sharon, I see your question around integrating with other systems. I'll actually address that in a second. The version of Copilot I was using there on Microsoft Forms is the paid-for version, which I believe is $30 per month. It's not the free version. So if you're not paying for it, in applications like Microsoft Forms, you have to manually create the questions, which isn't too onerous, but it is obviously nice to have Copilot available. The webinar is being recorded and will be available afterwards, indeed. Wingman, the cost for that, so effectively there's a base cost of £60 a month, which includes the first 10 users. So up to 10 users can use the system for £60 a month. And then any additional users over and above that is £3.50 a month. There's no long-term commitment. It's flexible, so month-to-month basis, can be adjusted, as based on your requirements there. I hope that helps. There's a question about syncing files between SharePoint and OneDrive. So it may be beneficial for you to know. So when you use OneDrive to sync, a specific area in SharePoint to your local machine, you effectively have copies of those files on your local machine, right? When you then make a change to any of those documents and you close the application, OneDrive will, in the background, copy that file back up to SharePoint. And so the main problems for that is, first of all, you lose any co-authoring or collaborative functionality. So in SharePoint, if you're not using OneDrive, you can actually have multiple people open the same document. These are Microsoft Office documents like Word and Excel, and you can co-author, which means everybody can be editing at the same time, and you can actually see their little names pop up in the corner. You can see their cursor on screen. In terms of large Excel sheets, I wouldn't personally do that, but with Word documents, it works really well. But it is in theory possible with Excel and PowerPoint and the other Office apps. So when you're working on OneDrive, you lose that. You also have the potential of creating conflict. So if two users work on the same document at the same time, and they both close it down and it gets synced back up, the person who comes in second, OneDrive will effectively create a copy of that file. It will pop up in the corner. It will tell you there's a conflict, but if you ignore it, you're going to end up with two copies of the same file. I don't know whether your question, Karen, is around the invoice approval workflow or something we've demonstrated, but in theory, it shouldn't interfere in the sense that you can still sync that library and have the invoices available offline and copy new files in there, and they'll go through the same process. But it does obviously open, sort of a door there potentially for things to change in a way that they shouldn't. That's not as controlled. So Chris, you're asking about one user for Wingman. At the moment, we have to have that base cost for 10 users just because of the way the app is hosted and the infrastructure required. Unfortunately for us to charge, £6 a month we're going to make a loss on that. So, but I understand. The order of magnitude on the timesheet app cost, that is a very good question. I would say, let me do a quick calculation here, putting me on the spot. I would say, Dan, how many days do you think you spent on that app? But I know a lot changed. Let's be honest. What do you think?
Up to 10, I would assume. Maybe less.
I think in this case, it was, sort of a moving target for us. There is a lot that's very specific with this app that's quite unique. So a generic timesheet app like that is kept fairly simple, and that we get clear instructions from the start on how to develop it, would probably be 4 to 5 days of consulting. I'm not going to give our exact consulting fees on this call, but I just want to give you a rough idea And then obviously we're happy to give you a quote on specifics once we know what you need. Right, let me see any other questions. Nigel, do you tend to save this data in a SharePoint list, or is it another data location? I'm wondering, so I think you mean the timesheet data. Nigel, if you want to just post a new question if I'm misunderstanding you. This data in the timesheet application is being stored in a SQL database. That's our preferred place to store data for apps like this that are quite, complex, and it's multidimensional data. And then from SQL Server, we can obviously integrate it with other systems and do reporting and anything that's necessary. But yeah, if the data you want to store is not that complicated, as in it's two-dimensional, then you can save that in a SharePoint list, of course. Right. Okay, Tobias, you're asking about SharePoint, and you're saying it feels a bit overwhelming, confusing. Is there a good source to learn the overall concept? So what we tend to do with SharePoint, what we've demonstrated today is certainly on the advanced side of the spectrum in terms of what you can do with SharePoint, right? So you wouldn't start there. In terms of getting started with SharePoint, what we typically do is we help our customers with a little project where we migrate existing data into SharePoint. We help them create a structure and permissions, etc. And then once you've got some basic data in SharePoint, which is really, not complicated, then we host a little hour and a half training session with our customers to actually help their users understand the basic operations. So most of the time, SharePoint is used as a document repository where you're storing files and folders. And if you're using it like that, it's really easy. An hour and a half training session is enough to be able to show you how to use it. So we can definitely help you with that. Okay. I think we've covered all the questions. Callum, let me know if I've missed anything. Otherwise, I'm just going to switch back to my PowerPoint. Right. Okay, so I just want to finally talk about integration and reporting, and then we'll see if there's any further questions and then wrap this up. So in terms of systems integration, Sharon, you asked about potentially integrating SharePoint or Power Automate with an external system. So Microsoft they are developing some plugins with external systems, but they're very limited. I really doubt that the system you're mentioning here, your HR system, would be in that list. I know that they've got plugins for things like Google Drive, for example, so you can integrate with some external services, but if they're not in their library at the moment, then you won't be able to. So what we tend to recommend with cases like that, where you have a system that you'd like to integrate. So again, let me just take a step back for a second. If you think about the various systems and software packages that you use, you will very often realize that you're duplicating a lot of data. So you'll have, let's say, a list of customers in your accounting system. You'll maybe have a CRM or a sales system, let's say Salesforce or something like that. You'll maybe have internal Excel sheets. You'll have that same list of customers in many different places. And so if that's the case, you're doubling up on your work multiple times over in maintaining that list in separate places. So you may have heard the term API. An API is effectively just an open door to the internet that a software vendor will provide for you to be able to integrate with their system. So let's say, for example, in this case, the system you have is something like Salesforce, a CRM system where you capture opportunities and you generate quotes and you follow up with customers, and it's effectively the system you use to manage sales. They would, host this application, excuse my bad drawing, as a web application and a database, obviously, in their servers. But you don't have direct access into that. You can't just make a connection to their database and make changes. They will expose an API, and this API will is sort of an allowed set of interactions that you can have with their system. You could, for example, connect into Salesforce and say, give me a list of customers or give me a list of products. And they may even, potentially allow you to connect into their system and add data. So to add in a new customer or to make a change to a name. Now, these APIs, you still need an API consumer. So we, for example, wrote a little application that just sat in the cloud between two systems for one of our customers. I think it was last year, that when they created a new job in one of their systems, it would go to the other system and create the same job automatically in the background. So you wouldn't have to go into both systems and capture the details for those jobs twice. It would just automatically do it. And these apps are pretty easy to create. It does depend on the details of the API that's available in the system that you're using. But like I say, most of the mainstream systems have APIs that we could potentially consume and integrate. If you have systems that are already using database engines like Microsoft SQL Server, then we can directly integrate with those systems without an API. So we've done a lot of work with integration, but the main question you need to ask yourself is, how are we duplicating data? That would lead you to an opportunity there to potentially save a lot of time and effort over the long term. Right, so that's integration. If you have any questions, of course, drop it for us in the Q&A section. In terms of reporting, so now you've built this nice system to grab all of this data and you're capturing this data. What do you do with it? There tends to be two types of reporting. When you use the word reporting, people tend to think of these, nice looking dashboards. So this is a dashboard, a sample dashboard that's created in Power BI, which is a Microsoft application. In theory, Power BI is also something that you can use yourself with a bit of training. If you have a database or a data source that you can connect to, but it's also something that we can obviously help you with. The biggest challenge with these nice dashboards is doing the work of defining what metrics or key performance indicators you're actually trying to report on. And once we understand what it is that you're trying to quantify, then we can help you do that and present it in a nice visual way. In our experience with smaller, small to medium enterprises, we actually find that the main benefit in reporting is actually just in very simple tabular data. So what we've done for a number of customers is effectively schedule emailed reports that come in, let's say, on a weekly or a monthly basis, and gives you a list of data that you can then work with. I mean, this data can be in the body of an email. It can be in an attachment. But if you think about any reports that you maybe need to generate on a regular basis, those can just be automated and designed so that you just get them in your inbox and you're ready to go without having to manually process that, on your own. So to give you an example, one of our customers have a training database where they capture the training, all the training their staff have gone through over the years. And they get an email, I believe it's every Monday, 8 a.m., that gives them a list of training that will expire within the next couple of months. So then they know, this training needs to be booked in for these people, and they can, get the moment they book in training and they go into the database and say, we've booked this person to go on this training on a future date, that item drops off the list on the email so that they know no further action is required. Then after the training, they get a new email that tells them, this person has completed his training. You have to go into the database and upload their certificate and actually confirm that they've achieved the training. So the idea is the system needs to chase you. It needs to tell you what needs to be done. Whereas a lot of manual systems, as an admin team, you have to remember, or someone has to think about going in and looking at the records and identifying what actions need to be taken. So that is a tremendous benefit, and that really helps, managing compliance. Okay, so I mean, that's pretty much it on reporting. Obviously, it is very important in designing a system because you sort of have to decide what you want to get out of it before you begin, because that could just, guide some of your decisions. Okay. Karen, you've asked, is there an additional cost to license to Power BI? That is a good question. I don't know, Callum, could you maybe do me a favor, or Dan, and look that up? I think there is a license cost, Karen, but I'm a bit fuzzy on the details there, so we'll check for you. Now, I think where I wanted to land was just to say, well, how do we go about performing automation? So the main thing I want to tell you is that the biggest problem users have is what I would call operational self-awareness. So users staff members tend to be in a mode where they're just going about, they just want to get the job done, right? They just want to fill in the form. They just want to take the next step, and they just keep going in the same way they've always done it. So why are we doing it this way? Well, it's the way we've always done it. And having operational self-awareness means that you need to take a pause and actually ask yourself, why are we doing it this way in the year 2025? Is there a better way to do this? And I think the main question you can ask yourself is, where in the business are we spending most of our time performing repetitive tasks? If you can answer that question, you can make tremendous savings over the long term by automating those processes. And very often, it can be as simple as designing a Microsoft Forms form. It doesn't need to be a very complicated system that you go and buy on the internet to try and address a problem. So having that operational self-awareness, I would say, is absolutely key. Some people, are not interested, but I think that I think most of the users in this webinar, you're in a position where it makes sense for you to develop that skill or develop a team that has that ability. The second point I have on here is to schedule automation meetings. So if you just booked in, if you don't know where to start and you just booked in a meeting once a month, once every 2 months, with a group of people within your management team, to just ask the question, where are we wasting time? Where are we, spending a lot of time capturing data that it can be made a lot easier? And you'll very quickly out of that draw up a list that can then be prioritized in terms of how much value it would give you. And then, you can look to either develop those systems yourself, or you can involve us to assist you with that. And then obviously, as I say, point number 3 is to get help. We're more than happy to book in a consultation with you at a convenient time, and we can talk through some of the challenges you may be facing and give you some suggestions. There are some problems that can take quite a bit of investment to solve, but very often you might find that there are some very high impact opportunities that can be addressed with very low development cost or investment. So yes, I'd like to just open the floor. If you have any further questions, please post it for us. I don't know, has anyone, Dan or Callum, got an answer on the Power BI license question?
I've responded to Karen. There is a free version of Power BI, but it lacks a lot of features compared to what the Power BI Pro offers, which is $14 a month per user. Yeah, the features are very lackluster on the free version.
I'll ask Beth to get in touch with you, Karen. She'll have far more information. There might be a not-for-profit discount, for example, as well. So I'll ask Beth kindly to get in touch. I have just put a poll on the screen as well. It just gives us an idea of things that we could be looking at helping you. We want to help you streamline as much as possible. So if you could just share some ideas that you have, that'd be fantastic for us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So in terms of actions after the webinar, by all means, get in touch on any of those channels available on the screen there. info@excellence.it is the obvious place to go, but we'd be happy to have a consultation with you. In terms of Wingman, we do offer a free trial. So I guess Callum's just posted another little poll there. If you if you want to respond on that. But we can. The nice thing about Wingman is it's very easy to deploy on your system once we've got everything configured in the back end. And we can, you don't have to install any software. We just basically have to activate it within your 365 tenancy, provided we've got access into that. But yeah, we'd love to have a conversation and hope this has been beneficial. Obviously, it's not been a training session to try and show you in detail how to use all of these systems, but at least it's given you some ideas, hopefully, of ways in which you can look to automate processes. So thank you so much. Any other words from you guys?
Thank you very much, guys.
And just one final one from me. If you have any queries, you can always pop them to the marketing email as well, where directly comes to me, so I'll be more than happy to help where I can. And then just wanted to say a big thank you to Eugene and Dan for hosting, and thank you everyone attending. There'll be a copy of the webinar. You'll receive an email very soon.
Thanks everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.